now we are moving into our panel discussion. I'd like to call to the stage our speakers. We're going to be talking about vision-driven storytelling and how to transform your brand narrative into lasting customer loyalty. So if we could have our panel speakers come to the stage, and we'll get started. Hi, it's so good to see you guys.
Good to see you.
Thanks for having us. Welcome. Yeah. Now, some folks couldn't make it between weather and the flu and other things, so it's good to see you guys here today. So let's get started with a round of introductions. Nicole, you want to start us off and say hello?
Sure. Hi, guys. My name is Nicole Kellner. I'm the VP of Brand Marketing at State Bags. We are a travel and lifestyle bag brand for the whole family, so we design bags for men, women, and kids, ranging from amazing, unique kids' backpacks with matching luggage to elevated functional weekenders to chic beach bags, really everything the family on the go might need. We're also a give back brand, so for every State bag sold, we donate a percentage of proceeds to families in need in the ways they need it most.
Thank you. Jen, you want to say hello?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Jen Pintaluba. I'm VP of Media and Performance Marketing at Norwegian Cruise Line. You might be asking yourself, why is a cruise line here at a retail conference? But I can tell you this has been a really great week for me. A lot of what we do in cruise is very similar to the retailers here. But we have 20 ships sailing. We operate worldwide. And I'm responsible for all of our full funnel media in terms of upper, mid, and lower funnel, TV all the way down to search, social media, and e-commerce.
Excellent. Ellie, hello.
Hi, I'm Ellie Uberto, and I'm the Director of Marketing at Duluth Trading Company. So Duluth Trading Company is a retailer. We make functional workwear, and I also am responsible for full funnel marketing from TV all the way down to search. I also run our influencer program and all of our events and activations.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like you guys have your hands in all the channels. So, when it comes to storytelling and really driving vision amongst all those channels, I'm sure it looks different on search than it does with influencer, than it does, middle of funnel. So, first question, I'd just like to open it up and talk about, different channels. So what are you guys seeing as far as driving that narrative full funnel? Does it look different bottom of funnel? Does it look different top of funnel? And what does that mean to each of your brands? Nicole, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think something that we've been trying to do at State is find ways to bring our storytelling across all channels. That we've found that customers really connect to our brand story, whether it's hearing from our founders or hearing about our give back. So tying that in across the funnel has been really important for us. It looks a little bit different on each channel, obviously. If we're starting at the top of the funnel, we have to introduce the customers to the story, and then when we get to the bottom of the funnel, they are already familiar with it, and they're kind of feeling really connected to it, and it just helps them feel confident in that purchase.
Yeah, confidence is so important. And thinking about Norwegian Cruise Lines and thinking about full funnel,
yeah.
How are you guys seeing applying storytelling across the full funnel strategy at the cruise line?
Yeah, sure. Let me ask you real quick, who's been on a cruise before? Okay, great. I hope you sailed Norwegian. If you did, thank you. So if you've sailed on a cruise, you know that it's a really complex purchase, right? So I think storytelling is really important to make sure that you're starting with emotion. That's often what we look at in terms of our upper funnel. So we have a new brand campaign that's launched. It's different out here. And a lot of what we're doing is building that connection to a guest. I feel like that's important in terms of the launch at the beginning, but then in the mid-funnel from a consideration standpoint, that's where we're really leaning into the reasons to believe and why Norwegian. And then obviously in the lower funnel, looking at opportunities to close the deal. And so the content throughout that entire journey, the important piece that we found is to make sure that in cruise, you can really tell the story throughout that's emotional, but that you're also answering questions on uncertainty. So looking at it from that perspective, I think it's a really great way to make sure that we're getting them over barriers, but also delivering that message that's going to stay with them.
I think that's so important for, first-time cruisers as well, and, thinking about folks that may not have been on a cruise,
Exactly.
getting ahead of those uncertainties with their first interaction with the brand.
Yeah.
So as a follow-up to that, how are you measuring loyalty and retention and then building long-term customers through that storytelling?
Yeah, that's a great question. So really loyalty for us, we're looking at making sure that we're not only focusing on single channels in terms of performance, we're really making sure that we understand that full-term loyalty throughout the entire journey. So again, leading on opportunities to tell that story. I'll give you an example. I'm a mom, so when I see content out in the marketplace that really speaks to what it feels like to go on a cruise, what it feels like to see your kids playing in the sand, and you have that emotional connection, I have a connection to that brand, so I'm already locked in. And then I might see on social media content creator family that has teens that are traveling on a Norwegian Cruise Line cruise, and they're talking about all the amenities that they have on board. That's something that, as from my experience, I can relate to, and you're driving through that consideration. And then ultimately, once I, maybe decide to bring my parents on board, I have to understand if it's really going to be right for me. And so a lot of what we can do is focus on answering those questions, but really the loyalty comes through in terms of making sure that once we deliver upon that message throughout, they go on the cruise, they actually experience it for real life, and then they come back and they tell their friends, and they go on social media as well. That's where you'll start to build that community, and then they'll come back again and again.
Yeah, keep on coming back. I love cruising. It's my favorite way to go.
Me too.
Yeah. And then for Duluth, so love your brand. We were chatting a little bit earlier. My father's in construction, and Duluth was built around, tradesmen and tradeswomen. So, thinking about full funnel and how you tell your story, what does that look like across the entire funnel? And then what do you expect storytelling to achieve at each stage of the funnel?
Yeah, so it definitely looks different at each stage of the funnel. One of the first things that people say to me when I tell them I work at Duluth is, I love your ads. It's that, or they show me their underwear. But but I think people know us for, the ads that they see on TV. It's that very distinctive line art and that very distinctive voice. And it's the formula that we have is, Duluth is not average and all other clothing is. And then as we move down the funnel, it's much more about how does our product fit into the consumer's life. So, our consumer is very, hands-on, DIY. They might not all actually be in the trades, but they're people who, work with their hands. So how does our product benefit that work? But I think the common thread is that all of our storytelling is benefit-driven, and it's really focused. It's like, why should you believe in our product? And I think that is what gives it strength regardless of what stage of the funnel they're in. And there's also a thread of humor throughout it all. So we're making serious product, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. And I think that's really what drives that loyalty from our consumer.
Yeah, you have to have fun every step of the way in everything that you do, right? And let's talk about the underwear comment for a minute for those that don't know Duluth. So Duluth helped to solve for plumber's crack or plumber's butt, if you guys are familiar with that. Plumber bending over doing their thing, and then oops, butts hanging out. But you guys created these long tail shirts. You want to talk a little bit about your signature shirts?
Yeah, so we have one of our core products is a long tail tee. So it solves for that problem of plumbers bending over and covers their crack. And we have a lot of products that are like that. For example, we have our ballroom jeans. They're aptly named. And then, we try to, view all of our product like that. So, there's a clear benefit to the product. And then we think about, how do we communicate that to the customer in a way that is humorous and also lets them know, this serves a purpose in your life.
Yeah, it's got to connect back to everyday life. And, you want your folks to look at it and say, oh, yeah, that'll help solve a problem in something I'm doing every day.
Yep.
And I think all you guys do a great job of that. I think about State Bags, and I think about, your brand being founder-led, run by husband and wife with kids. I have a child myself, so it's the backpack is so important. So you want to talk a little bit about, what it's like leading marketing at a founder-led brand, and what that looks like and how that translates to storytelling.
Definitely, yeah. Founder visibility is huge for us at State. Like you said, State was founded by a husband and wife duo, Jack and Scott Tatelman. They're still heavily involved in the business. Jack is our CEO and creative director, and Scott is our chief giving officer, or our give back guy, as we like to call him. He runs all of our giving initiatives, and they're also parents too. Two amazing kids, so their true lived experience as being parents is tied into every aspect of our business, stemming from the way we design our product to how we talk to our customer, all the way to how we design our give backs initiatives. They also kind of directly represent our target customer. They're aspirational but super approachable. They're very cool but down to earth. They kind of represent this couple that our customers would actually want to be friends with. So when we introduce them to our customers, there's this instant connection of like, oh, I like them, I want to be like them, I trust them. So they've always been core to our brand and our storytelling. We've definitely dabbled back and forth over the years of, should we show our founders more, should we not show our founders more? And we found that when we lean into it, leaning into it because of that trust and that connection, it feels less like a brand selling a product and more like a friend selling a product, and customers feel really connected to them.
Yeah, I think that's so important, that connection. So, when you think about the media that you're putting out there, how you're connecting with your audience, what are some good just tips and tricks that other brands can really take from this panel today to ensure that everything that they're putting out there is just based on kind of a genuine, authentic type of feeling rather than just performative?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my biggest tip, if you can, I know not everyone can, is to be scrappy. We found that just having our co-founder, Jack, take a video in her studio explaining why our bag was created is our top performing creative again and again, and beats our highly produced studio photography every single time. So I think if you have the ability to lean into scrappier, less on-brand content, I found that customers really resonate with that, and it might be a little scary, and some people on your team might not be so excited about it, but when they see the numbers, I think they'll be down to lean into it a little bit more.
Yeah, scrappy, on-brand, and UGC, and you guys do a great job at just making your brand feel so authentic. It's so connected to your mission. Yeah. So, Jen, so thinking about, you guys have such a broad digital ecosystem. So how does Norwegian Cruise Line ensure that the storytelling feels connected and intentional rather than fragmented?
Yeah, I think that's really important to make sure that every channel has a particular role. So when you're looking at it, upper funnel, often what we're trying to do is obviously create awareness, create connection to the brand. The mid funnel, the consideration is where we're really going to bring that to life in terms of focusing on social media that's going to create belief and value. And then at the end of the day, from a lower funnel perspective, it's where we often lean on the last touch, which is ultimately to get somebody over the edge with promotions. But I think from a fragmentation standpoint, if every single channel has a role and the messaging throughout the entire journey is very clear and has that core common thread that you're leaning on from a brand perspective, it's going to feel more orchestrated and very less fragmented.
Yeah, yeah. And what would you say is that common thread for Norwegian Cruise Line? When someone cruises Norwegian, what can they expect? What's like the overarching, just connected theme?
Yeah, we're really founded on freedom and flexibility. We've been an innovator in the cruise line industry for 60 years now. And so a lot of what we lean on is the ease of cruising and the wonderful curated experience that our guest is going to have.
Yeah, curation is key. And
yeah.
Flexibility is also key when it comes to cruising.
Exactly.
Like, if you don't want to eat at 6 p.m., that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for Norwegian too, how are you evolving customer expectations to shape your content and your media strategy overall?
Yeah, I mean, I really think you have to understand who your customer is. That's obviously the competitive advantage. And really, looking at their hangups. So for example, if you have a retired couple and they're worried that there's, not gonna be a good experience, there's overcrowding. A lot of what I would suggest everybody does is understand your customer, understand where there's gonna be some friction, learn those questions that might come up, find an opportunity to essentially cluster those together and develop content that would ultimately answer those questions. That's something that, I'm sure you've all heard about AI as part of this conference, but from an AEO perspective, if you're taking those questions and where you're ultimately going to see some hangups and you're answering that on behalf of the brand and that's coming through when people are searching in LLMs, et cetera, that's going to create more credibility. And I feel like ultimately that's where those customer insights are going to help you build reassurance with your guest or with your customer to ultimately purchase.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about AEO because, that is one of the hottest topics. It's what we really need to all work on right now.
Yeah.
So thinking about storytelling, when it is literally just an answer engine optimization tactic and strategy. I'm curious, from all your viewpoints, are you guys thinking about AEO like your FAQs now? Are you thinking about AEO like your SEO? What are some just best practices that you guys are thinking about as AEO starts to develop and large language models start to become just more front and center for brands?
Yeah, I think we're definitely still just dipping our feet in the water here, as probably many of us are. But starting to do small things, like you said, building out that FAQ content has been really impactful for us, and then bringing it more throughout the product pages and the collection pages where we can, especially for bags. People have a lot of questions. So really bringing that throughout the whole site experience has been pretty valuable so far. It's interesting to think about the brand storytelling piece of that. I actually haven't thought about that yet, but it'll definitely be something we'll start to layer in once we kind of like nail down the product piece first.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, a lot of what we're doing from a foundational standpoint of what we've done for SEO, I think is really set us up for success with AEO. But we don't stop there. What we're constantly looking at are reviews. So with Cruise, there's a ton of review sites out there. Obviously, Reddit is a big one, but also Cruise Critic is another one. And a lot of that content is ultimately feeding the LLM. So I think focusing on reviews, making sure that where you can, and obviously a great way to curate more positive reviews from your guests that have a wonderful experience with your product is a benefit. But also looking at more of the kind of technical things like schema, for example, and FAQs, making sure that there's a robust strategy that you have in place for AEO is critical. But I think what you really need to focus on is, again, answering those questions that can come up, because that's how people are searching these days. But again, the foundation for SEO, if you have that in a good place, you're already on your way.
Yeah, that's the foundation for success. Yeah. How is Duluth thinking about AEO?
Yeah, so I think for us, we also have a lot of the foundation already there. Our core customer is actually an older customer, and they, for a long time, have an interesting way of using our website. It's often they kind of use it like a social platform. So we have a lot of reviews on our website, especially for some of that legacy product that they love, which has again set a very good foundation for us. And then I think it's also thinking about how do we bring storytelling back to our website. We're a catalog company from our founding, and as we've moved away from print, our storytelling has become a little bit more fragmented, and kind of rightfully so, right? People are consuming media in a much more short form way, and we have to kind of meet each customer on their own journey. And so now we're thinking about, all right, how do we take that storytelling and bring it back to our website and really lean in there?
Yeah, and I think that really helps to connect with a younger audience, and kind of build that broader audience for Duluth. Because I can remember the days of getting it's like getting your JCPenney's catalog. Duluth was the same way.
Yeah.
And have very Norman Rockwell kind of images in there, and but funny little Norman Rockwell images that were kind of like the New Yorker or something. And I feel like that's what the kind of older demographic has connected with. So what have you seen in that shift going from that, direct mail? You guys were a heritage brand, shifting to that more digitally led approach. What has that journey been like?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we used to get, and I hear it a lot, especially sometimes for our board. But I see Duluth everywhere, because it used to be catalog, out of home, a ton of cable TV. And just, very traditional media that was everywhere. And now as we're, still trying to meet our core customer and where they are, but also bring in a younger customer and become a more digitally led brand, storytelling has to become more short form. And it's, again, more tailored to each customer and where they are in their journey. So one person isn't seeing Duluth everywhere anymore, right? If I'm somebody that is really swayed by influencer content, I should be seeing more influencer content. If I'm somebody who listens to a lot of streaming audio, that's where I should be getting more of my Duluth ads. And so there is no more everyone seeing our content everywhere in the same place.
Sure.
So I think that's sort of been the way that we've shifted. It's people are still seeing Duluth everywhere. It just looks different for different customers based on where they need to see us.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you touched on a good point there with creator and influencer becoming a very important channel, becoming a very important angle. What does that look like? How do you ensure that the brand narrative is still Duluth at its core? There's brand guidelines and everything that you can give to a creator as you hand the mic over to them, but how do you ensure that the storytelling and everything is still there at the core?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a balance for us. We try to, the way that we manage our program is a little bit of like the expected influencer. We definitely want influencers that are DIY, working in a wood shop, gardening in a garden. We want our product represented with the appropriate, end use, of course. And it's also a space where we get to put our product or present our product in a way where we wouldn't normally, or when we're owning the creative, we wouldn't present it that way. So we do lean into fashion influencers. Workwear is fashion now, and so that's something that we're testing into embracing. And I think there's different levels of comfortability with that, but it's proving successful for us. And I think as we're leaning into a younger customer, we have to be okay with the fact that like even if we don't perceive ourselves as a fashion brand, there are core pieces of our product that are fashionable. And so it works for us, even if it's a new territory.
Yeah, if it works, it works.
Yeah.
And it's all about getting the content out there,
Yep.
Experimenting, and then just holding fast and true to the non-negotiables and sticking to the brand. So let's talk a little bit about creator and influencer for State. What are you guys seeing, and what are some of your just core initiatives around keeping that storytelling tight and just connected amongst your creators and influencers, and making sure it doesn't, the story doesn't run away, that State Bag still stays true to its brand narrative?
Yeah, creator and influencer is huge for us. We've definitely been leaning into it a ton over the years. I think it's interesting because we say State is for every type of family, no matter what your family looks like. So we used to be really precious about our briefing and our creator selection and making sure they're really well styled and all the things. And we actually found that while we still brief them and still like them to be well styled, when we pulled back a little bit and really let them just feature their family in the way that they travel or wear their bags or do their life, we found really strong success in doing that. So I think, one, curate like a really strong brief that you make sure your product looks good and you make sure there are talking points that they get to, but giving the creators more flexibility to kind of really showcase who they are, I think will really pull through to the customer.
Yeah. And what does creator and influencer look like for Norwegian? And what are you seeing as those success levers?
Yeah. So the creator program that we have is really important for us. In fact, we actually brought in-house creators as part of our team to make sure that there was an extension. That's helped us in a lot of ways from a content perspective. Obviously, the authenticity piece is key to make sure that we're really showing what it's like to sail on Norwegian and experience that. But we don't stop there. We actually partner with what we call external content creators that fit within who we're trying to target in terms of our objectives. And ultimately that's great because we can get a lot of really wonderful creators that our target audience is following. We can make sure, again, there's the experience that they're getting on board is coming across through their eyes, somebody that they trust. And again, cruise is complex. You really have a curiosity to understand what the staterooms look like and what is it like to go on the aqua coaster on the ship. All those things, when they can be brought to life from a creator, it really makes a difference.
Yeah, 100%. And how are you thinking about some of those like third-party booking type of sites, and ensuring that like your travel agent type of strategies are staying tight, and that the brand narrative for Norwegian still lives within that ecosystem?
Sure, yeah. Actually, my last role before moving over to Norwegian, I was VP of Trade Marketing for Regent Seven Seas Cruises, which is our luxury line under Norwegian Cruise Line Holding. And what was really great about that role, it was one of my favorite ones, was we actually were able to help our travel advisor community across all different types of advisors. It's a huge community. We had 40,000 advisors that we supported through that messaging. And so ultimately, you know, we shared best practices, we partnered with them to make sure that that messaging was consistent throughout. But it was a really great way to make sure that, you know, we kept them informed of the latest innovations and ways that they could make sure that, you know, their clients ultimately would come and book. And so that's consistent throughout really our brands in the organization. We make sure that the advisor community is well informed, they're supported, and we're providing them assets and in some cases technology to support that.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so let's talk about, let's see here. We touched on creator. I think we can start moving into some questions. If anyone has any questions for our panelists. I see some hands coming up over there. So let's, do we have someone to run the mic? Over here in the red, let's hear from some folks in the audience. And thank you so much, guys, for being here. This is such a good panel. So good to learn from you guys today. Yeah.
Hi, that was such a great discussion. Thanks, guys. My question is for Nicole. You mentioned your target customer. And I think, you know, maintaining brand story is easy when you are marketing to your target customer. But how do you maintain brand story and establish loyalty when it's someone that isn't necessarily your target customer?
Yeah, that's a great question and something we've had to figure out over the years because, you know, you can really expand when you go outside of your target customer, and obviously being a bag brand for every type of family, is how we call it. So whether, you know, you're a family with kids and parents, or a dog mom, or a best friend duo, we really say we have bags for everyone. I don't have kids, and I carry state bags all day long. So we've really thought about shifting into different customer demographics, one of them being, you know, 20 to 30-year-old women graduating college, for example. And you can still carry those same core values as a brand, but you just have to shift them to what they want to hear about and how they want to see it. So we've just leaned into different type of content that we found really resonates with them. One of them being creator content. We've reached out to a ton of creators in that demographic and started leaning into unique ways to use our weekender or use our beach bag that we've never even thought of before. And it worked really well. So I think it's just thinking about how that demographic wants to be spoken to and testing new channels and new ways to speak to them.
Excellent. Test.
Hi. So, loved this conversation as well. I wanted to talk about the idea of scrappy content. I think as marketers, we can all see that that's performing very well. It's authentic. And I'd love to know if you have any guidelines or decision-making processes that you use when deciding if it should be a more highly produced video or something that's more scrappy.
Yeah, I could talk about scrappy content all day. We love scrappy content at State. Obviously, it depends on the channel, you know, and I think that's where testing is really important. Every brand's going to be different, so I would say, if you can, try and see what happens across channels. Obviously, with channels like organic, social, and paid, we find that leaning into more scrappy, UGC-style content constantly outperformed our high-res branded assets, but we still are, you know, an elevated brand, so we do still want to have those assets, and that's where places like our website or our email will bring those more into there to continue, you know, being an elevated brand. So like I answered on the last question, it's really about testing and finding out what works for you, but I would say don't be afraid to just try and see what happens.
Yeah, I would say for us, I mean, going back to, you know, we started in catalog, we've had to navigate moving out of this just highly producing content and using that highly produced content on every single channel. And, you know, like Nicole said, you know, it still definitely has its place, right? You know, whether it's our website, email, paid media, certainly, but then using scrappy content, you know, when it's, you know, Instagram stories, Reels, TikTok, and then even some places within, you know, paid social, it performs very well also. I think for us, it's been really having to work on some of our internal processes around you know, how do you go from a company that is we go on very structured photo shoots and then developing a process where we're also able to do quick turn content and get that approved in a timely manner. So that I think has been kind of the biggest shift for us, is just that process and mindset around getting content out more quickly.
Yeah.
And I'd say some of it too is, if you have that more scrappier content that's more authentic, maybe from, social, organic social, but you have the ability to develop maybe a little bit more of a polished video, depending on what your strategy is, you can also use that content in many ways with B-roll and kind of produce it together such that it ultimately looks like it is a bit more elevated and polished, while still having that more scrappier content. So, you ultimately spend a little bit less than a huge video shoot.
Yeah. Scrappy yet elevated.
Yeah.
That's the name of the game, right? Yeah. I think we had a question in the front here from some of this gentleman here.
Thank you very much. The question I had for you, Ellie, was related to the long tail shirt campaign. When it came to the ideation on that campaign, for the product development standpoint, was the consumer insight found first about how the shirt was being used, or did you create the campaign from the perspective of already having the product designed to solve that problem?
So all of our product is designed based on the consumer insight that this is a need that our consumer has. So we start with, here's a problem that our customer is having. How do we develop a product that fixes that need?
Yeah. Begin with the end in mind.
Yep.
All right. Do we have any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you so much to our panelists.
Thank you.
Let's get a round of applause for everyone that was here today. Thank you.